Hey there, welcome to the garage. My name's Buck. I have Squib across from me,
Hello.
and today we're talking about something pretty special, Squib. Talking about the 1,000 Yard Mission.
The 1,000 Yard Mission.
Yes, it's the journey that one takes from the start of his shooting journey. And I'd say everyone who shoots has a journey, whether
hmm
that be someone who wants to get in the competition or someone who just wants to shoot steel, like me. And so we're going to talk specifically about my journey, my mission, and that's kind of what it's called this. From my starting point to this past June, I set a new record 1,050 yards
Oof.
at steel. I did it with a couple of guns, but before we kind of get into that, I'm going to do our ceremonial start of the podcast episode.
Man,
Kind of
what do you
what's
got? What do you got there in your handbook?
so we're going to start with kind of what happened since the last episode. I have a Ride-On scope here. As a side, kind of a side gig, I review optics. It's very lucrative. I built some great relationships. There are some fantastic people in the firearms industry, and I've gotten the pleasure to talk to a lot of them, specifically the folks at Ride-On. They've sent me one scope, I think, to review, and I have it in my hands right now. This is a Ride-On. Oh, I know the model. It's like a 3 Primal, I think.
And that's a what, 6 to 24?
6 to 24 by 50, 30 millimeter tube. They sent me a base with it just to make sure that nothing fails. It is a 3 Conquer.
Okay.
Sorry.
I love the grooved adjustment knobs there. Those
The
are cool.
Well, and honestly, that actually gives you some really nice purchase
hmm
on the knobs.
Oh, give the listeners that click right next to the mic. Oh yeah.
Hopefully that registers in the mic.
Oh, I bet it will.
Otherwise, it'll just be you going, "Oh yeah,"
There's
and
nothing wrong with
yeah.
that. Oh
So
yeah.
illuminated optics, 6 to 24. Do I have the illumination off? Please tell me I do. I do. Zero stop turret, brass internals. I dropped this thing on concrete, Squib,
Really? I couldn't
as I
tell.
do with all of my testing. That's actually a really good point I put in my article. Um, this Ride-On took a beating. I did not go easy on it.
I would have guessed that that was brand new out of the box still.
And so I dropped it on concrete. I drop all my scopes on concrete. I want to caveat that. Whether it's primary arms, Athlon, Vortex, whatever I get, I drop on concrete. I do not care.
I drop all my carry guns in the dirt a couple times right when I get them, but that's about as close as I get.
You gotta desensitize your
Yeah,
desensitize ties.
desensitize
That's a
yourself.
word,
Yep.
to whatever you're carrying or whatever you're using. Because
hmm
at the end of the day, you have to be okay with it getting dirty.
Yeah.
So,
Otherwise, it sits in the safe.
but with optics, the big question is it going to hold up to recoil,
hmm
let alone blunt pressure?
hmm
I've heard many a horror story about hunters leaving their guns leaned up against their trucks,
hmm
and then something happens and they tip over and lands on the optic. Now, granted that maybe there's not a lot of pressure put on the optic when it falls like that. That's why I drop these by themselves, not attached to a gun, onto the concrete to see will it take probably what is the most force that's reasonably expected of an optic to take.
hmm
Not a 3 story off of a house roof drop, but a drop from about head height. So I reviewed this optic. It was a tack driver. Fantastic option. I hit 1,000 yards with it too. I used it on a Bergara B14 HMR Carbon Wilderness. A
Okay.
long name
Yeah.
in 6.5 Creedmoor. Very long name. A very capable firearm. Very capable scope. Hit 1050. So maybe that
Wow.
ties into our little mission here.
You are pretty much you're dang near double what I've ever shot for
And we
distance.
need to fix that, by the way.
Yeah, I just need a rifle I can do it with, or I'll borrow one of yours.
It's almost, I threw my hands up there, folks, because it's almost like he knows a guy.
It's like I know a guy
It's like you know a guy
who could
that
load some
has
really
a
great
couple
rounds
of
for it.
very capable firearms.
You mean my ARs aren't going to cut it?
I
What?
mean, your ARs can get a long ways out there.
550 is my max, and that was luck. That was not expecting to hit that target. It was a bonus target at a 3 gun
Was it
shoot.
with your Junk Wolf steel case?
Yes, it
No.
was
So it was
50,
luck.
55 grain steel case made in Russia.
FMJ
Because
junk
yeah,
ammo.
it was junk ammo, but that was luck. That was the winds and the gods just saying, "Hey, have a ping, buddy."
You know that happened to me on a 338 Lapois.
Really?
That's so I set a record, and that's so now I guess we're going into the episode.
Mm.
My journey started with the 300 Win Mag. I'll tell this 338 Lapois story beforehand, and we'll kind of get into it. But I was at a range testing some load development for Uncle Fredo. Uncle Fredo, shout out. And I was at 725, 750, somewhere in that range. And it had rained the night before. And when that happens, you can't see the dust kick up and you can't see your misses very well, depending on where you're shooting at and how far you're shooting at. And 338 Lapois, you can't, I couldn't recover from shooting that cartridge fast enough to see where it landed.
Hmm.
I was shooting on hardwood and I was using a Harris bipod with rubber feet, which means my bipod bounce was ridiculous.
Yep.
So I thought I saw a trail, a dust trail of where my bullet impacted. So I was like, let's just try this. 725, 750. I hold some random empty space in my glass because I don't have holdovers that far. I'm holding so much for windage, so much for elevation. I pull the trigger and I just see this massive blot of black end up on that white torso target. And I hear the loudest ping because 330 Lapois, it's 200.
Oh, yeah, that's a massive bullet.
And I think I was shooting a 300 grainer. It was either
Okay.
285 or 300. I can't remember. I don't know what the loading was. But he just gave me this ammo and said, hey, shoot it. Don't ever do that, kids.
No.
So I got this hit at like 725 and 750. That was my record for a while.
Heck yeah.
But if we go back to the beginning, and we'll actually get into this episode, my journey started with a Remington 700, chambered in 300 Win Mag. It's probably nauseating at this point because we've probably mentioned it on every episode since we've started.
If people haven't caught on, just go buy one of these already so Buck doesn't bring it up every time. If every person in our comments says, hey, I went and bought one of these, we will be so happy.
We would. I mean, it's a good gun, great gun. Um, so I started with that, and I bought just the gun, bare bones, nothing on it, and I had to start from there. And as I was researching products to purchase, I had to also think of or do my research on what's quality. You know, what can I put on this gun with reasonable expectation that it will stay on the gun?
Right. Because optics can be just as expensive as the firearm a lot of the time. People don't realize that.
Well, if not, I mean, you can pay as much as you want for a scope.
Hmm.
As much as you want. You can pay 50
You
bucks.
can buy that Night Force for $3,000.
Yeah,
It's
both
gonna
ends
look
of the
really
spectrum.
cool.
Yeah, look really cool while you're shooting 500 yards with a 300 Win Mag, and you have to hold like 2 MOA. Well, I
I'd
don't know
do
what
it.
the holds are, but so I bought a base, a solid scope base, great foundation to put on Remington 700, and then this is where people are gonna just blast me in the comments. I bought a Simmons Pro Target 6 to 24 by 44 1-inch tube scope.
Now, did you buy it off Amazon?
No,
Okay.
well, I might have. I
Ah,
think it was Midway. I think it was
honestly,
Midway USA.
honestly, shout out to Amazon for carrying some decent gun stuff sometimes.
And they do. It's not my first stop usually
Right.
because I like to shop at Midway USA.
Hmm.
But they do have okay stuff sometimes
Sometimes.
depending on what you're looking at.
Yep.
I probably bought this off Midway. Great, fantastic scope. $130. Stood up to 300 Win Mag recoil.
Which is surprising,
It's surprising. Yeah,
but
very
not
much
unheard
so.
of.
Not unheard of. I set my first record. There's a shooting range in Sterling, Colorado, Logan County Shooting Sports Complex. I went to with my girlfriend, and she was my spotter. And I set my first record. I walked out, and I had only shot 100 yards before. So each shot that I made was my new record.
Okay.
So, start at 100, 2, 3, 4. Logan County Shooting Sports Complex has a 600-yard steel range. And then if you go west, they have shotgun trap, they have pistol, they have rimfire. It's a really, really cool range. And then at the top of the hill, they have their 1,000-yard range separated, and it is just 1,000 yards, no other targets. I think 1,000 and 1,050, and I think they have a 950.
Okay.
So I wasn't ready for the hill yet. It was very intimidating.
Oh yeah.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
So I settled for an impact at 600 yards, and I was tickled. I mean, you increase your range by 500 yards from your
That's a good
previous
feeling.
best. That's a really big stride
And
to make in
honestly,
my
a
day.
shout out for taking your girlfriend as your spotter because that could either be the greatest range day or the most frustrating
Well,
range day.
and you want to know the greatest part is she loved that rifle too.
Hmm.
And so I had brought that gun and my 6.5 Creedmoor, which that's something I'd like to talk about as well. I bought different guns on my journey to try and shoot. One of those guns was a Savage Model 12, exclusive to Cabela's,
Hmm.
chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. I bought that at a pawn shop. Someone had spray painted it
Oh,
tan.
oh,
Didn't look terrible.
I hate when people do that.
I thought it was Cerakote
Oh,
until the paint started chipping.
to be young and dumb.
Well, yeah, a great rifle. I think I shot one of my best groups at .327, somewhere around there,
Hmm.
with a 3 to 5 shot group. I don't remember which. Not important. But I had both scopes, and the Savage 12 had a Bushnell Forge 4.5 to 27 by 56 scope on it.
Dang.
Fantastic, like a $1,200 scope.
Hmm.
I had bought at the Bushnell factory outlet for like $600.
Firearm outlet stores. Oh, that
So
is
nice.
that is a dirty pleasure. If nobody's experienced that, do it.
Emphasis on discount.
Big
Store,
discounts.
yeah, store models go for like 50% off.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's how I bought this scope.
yeah. Better deals than on blemished models from buying from factories.
And so I had bought this $1,200 scope for $600, put it on this rifle. It was about $1,000 I had in the whole setup. And I put that in my girlfriend's hands to spot. And then I used the 300 Win Mag. And then she shot both. She set her record at 450
That's
or
pretty good.
5,
Heck yeah.
which that was her first time shooting bolt guns.
Hmm.
So fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But she set her record with the 300 Win Mag with the $130 scope on it. She liked the Win Mag better than the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Sometimes it's about the gun that feels better, not the gun that costs more.
Well, and you'd think 300 Win Mag versus 6.5 Creedmoor, which one kicks the most? Which one was lighter? The answer is the Remington 700. Cheaper scope. You could tell there was some quality issues or some variance. I won't say issues because it was still usable.
Hmm.
You could tell it was a little bit more blurry through a $130 scope versus a $1,200 scope. Yep, I could totally accept that. And she wanted nothing to do with that 6.5 Creedmoor with that Bushnell Forge on it.
It's just sometimes what we like.
I mean, I guess so. But regardless, so that I set that record that day, and kind of the other guns that I picked up on my way through my journey. So I started with that 300 Win Mag, and then that Savage 12 was the next one I purchased. And then I ran into my most expensive love of my life. Not my girlfriend. She is less expensive than the Savage 110 BA Stealth in
Mm.
338 Lapua.
Le Poing.
I spent $1,300 on that gun. I'll say it. People might say I spent too much for it. I don't care. That's what I
Oh,
spent.
I've spent dumb money on things that I thought were pretty too.
It was
Not
just the
not including my
allure.
ex-wife.
The it was the allure of 338 Lapua, and they gave me a box of Winchester ammo. It was hunting ammo. I still have the box because what the heck am I going to use it for?
Right.
And it was a $90 box of ammo they gave me. Just slapped it on the deal. Because who's going to buy $90 worth of 338 Lapua
Well,
ammo?
and,
They're
and
never going
gun
to shoot
shops
it.
don't really do that often, give ammo. It's just, and honestly, it comes down to cost and the margins on guns just aren't great.
Yes.
So to have them just toss you $100 box of ammo, that's pretty dang cool.
Yeah. Well, and my thought was, is we were in Warrensburg, Missouri, and they were probably thinking, who the heck is going to come in here? When's the next time someone's going to come in here and have interest in a 338 Lapua?
Yeah, there's monster deer down there, but they're not elephants.
Well, I mean, 338 Lapua for hunting in general. You got to get into some really big game
Yeah,
to justify
yeah,
that.
we're talking bear.
And even then,
Oops.
I would still take a 338 Win Mag over
Hmm.
the Lapua. Same bullet diameter. The Lapua's a little sharper, a little
Hmm.
faster, but I'd still take the Win Mag.
I like that adjective, sharper. It's
Yeah,
a great adjective that we don't hear in the
yeah.
gun world.
And it's just, you look at a 338 Lapua and the setup that it brings, and you can kind of say, okay, yeah, I understand now. So I bought that 110 BA Stealth and 338 Lapua, and I bought another Savage. So 3 out of the 4 guns we're talking about today are Savages. It's almost like I have a problem.
A little bit.
But so I bought another Savage 12, same variant as that 6.5 Creedmoor, but I bought the 308 version.
Hmm.
And that gun has shot 2 out of 3 of my best groups. one being .277. I remember specifically. Same diameter as a 270 bullet, and that's the 3 round group I shot.
So is that the tattoo you're getting next? Is .277?
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, now you are though, huh?
Wow. No, I don't want to pay the $20 for that tattoo.
I'll pay it.
Oh,
I'll pay for
really
Buck's
running out
tattoo.
of excuses here. So, I mean, all it is to say you get a really rounded experience when you're dealing with that line of cartridges
Hmm.
because you have a caliber under 30 in your 6.5 Creedmoor.
Hmm.
You have your 30s and your 308 and your 3 Win Mag. Depending on what kind of recoil you wanted to experience, you can choose which gun you wanted to shoot that day.
Right. On that subject, with you being a long range bench shooter like
Yeah,
that, do you ever see people take out 50 cals and do that?
I've seen one guy bring up the 50 cal, and it was a Barrett. But I think that was more for style and looks than anything.
Understandable.
Which I've heard Barrett's in 50 BMG. That's kind of the case. Is it's a looking
Yeah.
firearm.
Yeah. When I win the lottery, I won't tell anybody, but there will be signs. Like there'll be a Barrett in front of us. I'll be
A
like, guess
golden
what I
Barrett,
got, Buck?
a golden Barrett, not
Oh,
just a
Call of
Barrett.
Duty
Get a
vibes.
golden Barrett.
Oh, absolutely. Now I'm doing it. Matching Desert Eagles and 50 AE.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
So
If I win, I'll gift you one.
not many 50s at the range, and honestly, this surprised me the most. I've been to that range quite a few times. Not a lot of people going for the 1,000 yard steel
It's intimidating, like you
in
said, being up
general.
on the hill.
I helped a fella spot while I was there, and we got him on target within 5, 6 rounds. Um, and he was a competition shooter, and he didn't want anything to do with it at first. We were shooting
Hmm.
at 600 down at the other range. I said, "Hey, I'm gonna go shoot 1,000 anyway." This is when I broke my record and actually hit the target. And he said, "Well, I'll spot you." And I hit my 1,000 yard target, and I was like, "Hey, you need to get in on this."
Yeah, you're already there spotting. You might as well be shooting.
Well, and shooting 1,000 yards, I couldn't think of something more fun if you've never done it before. Breaking that barrier was one of the best feelings I've ever experienced shooting. So I tell him, you need to get up there. You need to shoot off spot.
For people that aren't aware, 1,000 yards, go walk 1,000 yards, and
Yeah.
you will be intimidated by that distance. I mean, that is 10 football fields, which is kind of hard to imagine.
Well, and the way I thought about it was we took spray paint there the first time, and because you go out to steel and you spray paint so you can see your
Mm-hmm.
impacts on steel. And there was a distance I got to. I was like, I don't want to walk anymore because I have to walk back.
Mm-hmm.
I was at like 300, 400 yards,
Yeah,
where I was like, okay, this is too far.
yeah.
And so you have 600 yards past that point till
Mm-hmm.
you get to 1,000. And so if I don't want to walk past 400, I don't want to go to 1,000. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? That's a long freaking
I'd
way.
be taking a dirt bike or a four wheeler out there.
A lot of people have golf carts on
Oh,
like
that's
the
smart.
the private 1,000 yard ranges that I've seen. They have golf carts,
That's smart.
or like you said, side by sides, four wheelers, whatever you want to
I would
say.
love to see a golf cart with instead of having the extra seats or place to put your golf bag in the back, I want to see a
Yeah,
gun rack. That'd be awesome.
yeah. So and we also did get my girlfriend at 1050.
Wow.
Actually, I think that was just 1,000.
Okay, so you got 50 yards
So I
on her,
got
is what
50
you're saying.
yards on her
Yeah, there
until
you
she
go.
catches up. We
There
did
you
get her
go.
on 1,000. Now that I remember the trip.
Just tell her that the gun isn't working. She can't go.
And here's the thing: she hit it with that 300 Win Mag first.
Awesome.
She hit it with the 338 Lapois second.
Okay,
So she hit it with both rifles.
that's awesome.
Granted, the Lapois you hold like a mil high and you're there. Not the real holds. People who are angry in the comments,
Mm,
but it's a flat shooting cartridge. It's going pretty fast.
yeah,
I was shooting 250 grainers, then factory ammo PPU. A lot of people will say it can't be done. It can.
that's a smacker.
Yeah. So my first 1,000 yard hit was with the 300 Win Mag as well. My girlfriend was spotting me on the 338 Lapois, and then we just switched when I hit.
No, now you got to take me there because I've never even been past
Yeah,
550.
yeah. No, we need to go. I have the ammo, but second impact was with the 338 Lapois. And then I went a second time and I hit it with my 308 and Savage 12. I have not hit it with my Savage 12 and 6.5 Creedmoor. So that's kind of the next step. I have 8 more hand loads for that. If I can get a hit on a 1050 piece of steel with those 8 remaining hand loads, I'll be happy.
Now, when you're saying that piece of steel, what is the size of that steel? Are we talking 8 by 10 plate, or what are we
No,
talking about?
I'm fairly certain it was an 18 by 24 inch.
Okay, gotcha. Which is
So
not a big target, anyways.
at 1,000, it looks hittable,
Yeah.
which I will say that. but I'm also looking at it through 4.5 to
Mm.
27s.
That's like
Uh,
we're basically at torso target size,
yeah,
18 by
yeah,
24.
and
That's
maybe a little
pretty close.
bigger, um, but very attainable. Um, so I'll take a hit.
Hits a
18 to
hit.
24, a hit's a hit, whatever. Um, Very exciting stuff.
Absolutely.
But some of the things that I had to focus on to get there, because my first record was that 600 yards, and then technically my second record was at 725, 750 with my Lapois, and then I hit the big 1,000. Um, that was over the course of 4 years. And I'll caveat this: I was in college for most of that time.
Mhm.
Not a lot of shooting happening in college.
Yeah, no, just
I
not a lot of
couldn't.
time or money for it.
Well, and I lived in the dorms 3 out of 4 years, and
Mhm.
so I can't bring a gun in
Mhm.
there. Obviously, that'd be some problems.
That would be frowned upon.
Very frowned upon, like arrested, frowned upon.
Yeah, definitely don't do that.
Don't do that. So I, out of those 4 years, I could only really shoot consistently out of like two of them.
Mhm.
So when you put that into consideration, there's a lot. Uh, there's a lot that happened in the last 2 years versus the fundamentals that I had to work on in the first 2 years. A lot of that's getting just comfortable behind the rifle because that is something that is so overlooked nowadays, especially with people who are buying budget rifles, which I won't knock budget rifles because they have their place.
Mhm.
I own many of them.
Their place is in Squib's gun safe because I'm a cheap boy when it comes to bolties.
But part of what you give up with going for a budget rifle is the comfort side of things.
Mhm.
And it's not that it's not attainable, you just have to work a little harder to get to that comfort zone. Because, and this is the one thing I'll harp on all episode, Squib, is the key to accuracy. Do you know what the key to accuracy is, Squib?
Consistency.
What? I can't, I forget my notes are up on the big screen so he can see them. I genuinely wanted him to kind of get at that, but you're right. Consistency is the key to accuracy. I was about to be so impressed before I realized you just read it off my notes.
I would be lying if I said I hadn't heard that from some gun YouTuber back in the day, and I
Really?
couldn't tell who it was. I couldn't tell you right now. Might be Masad Ayub. Shout out Masad with Wilson Combat. But I could be wrong on that. But I've heard the trick to accuracy is consistency.
Consistency is the key to accuracy.
You know, and coming from a drag racing family with cars,
Mhm.
consistency is key. I don't care how fast you are, you got to be consistent.
From the loading of your ammunition, the consistency of your ammunition, the consistency of yourself behind the rifle, everything has to match up so you can be consistent downrange.
Hmm.
So that's going to be the big key word of today's episode is consistency. So a lot of what I was working on for fundamentals when I couldn't get to the range, and this is going to make a lot of people upset, is my breathing. I don't know why, but breathing is a fundamental that people have decided to kind of turn into Pluto in the sense that it's no longer a planet. And
Hmm.
so breathing is somehow no longer a fundamental.
No, I'm sure that huge moving of your chest 3 inches makes no difference on accuracy. I
Well,
don't
and
know
as
who's
someone who's
pushing
prone
that.
and on the bench sometimes, it's easy for me to say that breathing is essential.
Mm.
But I think a lot of the people that are running and gunning are saying otherwise. I'm not sure where it came from. Breathing was a massive part in making sure I was comfortable behind the rifle.
Hmm.
Scope placement, breathing, head placement behind the rifle. There's a lot of neat tricks and tips you can kind of do to test yourself and how comfortable you are behind the rifle. And breathing, granted, you can probably tell it was my favorite one to work on because there's a certain art to making sure your breathing and your heart rate don't mix so you can pick out your heart rate so you can shoot between beats. And that is something I do work on. I don't drink caffeine the day before the range. I also don't wear sunglasses on range day until after I'm done shooting because having your eyes being squinty while you're looking through clear safety glasses is not cool.
Right.
So, but breathing is a big part of it. I would say if you're looking to shoot long range by yourself, not competition, because I can't speak to the competition side of things, Squib. When time is a factor, I don't want to say that I'm an expert. because I'm not.
I'll tell you for three gun, the breathing we're doing is breathing hard between running through different stages and whatnot.
Yeah,
So to hear that you are literally timing your shot with your heartbeat,
yeah.
that's like speaking French to me because I'm like, I'm trying to cut down as much time as I can, make sure I don't trip on my own shoes or something, let alone count my heartbeats.
And I think it's a lost art with the firearms culture
Hmm.
in general, is focusing on your internals in your body. Also making sure a big part of that is staying in shape. Because running 100 yards as someone who's unhealthy is going to be a lot more tasking and a lot more difficult than someone who is in shape.
Absolutely.
So, and that can affect accuracy. People, you'll brush it under the rug and say, whatever. But at the end of the day, I wholeheartedly believe that that will take part in your accuracy.
Hmm. Shout out to Grantham, get fit or die.
Get fit or die. And gun culture, I think they're getting better at making that transition and
Mm-hmm.
getting healthier. But I fully believe that you should at least try to live healthier to
Mm-hmm.
improve your shooting.
Yep. I think that fitness really does play into being a better
Yes,
shooter. Squib at 300 pounds was not the shooter Squib is today at 215.
exactly.
Ain't happening. Not even close.
And so my big thing is I run not long distance, but I run 2 miles.
I see you run by work almost every
Yeah,
day.
about 4 or 5 times a week. I try to sneak in a gym session there every once in a
Mhm.
while.
See, I got weak ankles and knees from
Yeah,
breaking my left ankle 3 times, so I'm a big jump rope guy.
yeah.
Less impact on me.
So I like to do that because it improves my lung capacity,
Mhm.
because I like to practice breathing, because I separate it from my heart rate, because I shoot between heartbeats. That's my big thing. And since I can focus on that, I feel like that translates well to keeping my reticle staying still, which translates to better consistency with my reticle being on target, whether that's through holdovers or just center point in the reticle. I think that's such an underspoken fundamental in the culture nowadays, and I don't care if I get chastised for that. That's okay. I'll die on that hill.
Yes, please criticize us for telling you to get healthier.
Well, and it's not even that part. It's just the fundamentals are, in general, getting brushed under the rug, and they don't need to be
Hmm.
because they're the reason they're fundamentals. If you're uncomfortable with competing, that's okay. I'm uncomfortable with competing. Go
Hmm.
shoot by yourself. When I hit 1,000 yard target, like I said, my girlfriend was spotting for me.
Hmm.
2 out of 3 of my records were shot with my girlfriend spotting for me.
Hmm.
I had no one else there.
Which it's not like she is some Marine Corps sniper spotter trained. It
No, she's not going to yell at me if I miss.
exactly. It's
Hopefully.
she was there to help you out, and that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think that is something that's romanticized that might not be necessary nowadays, is that if you're going to do it in a competition. I would say no. Just
Mm-mm.
go shoot, man.
You
Just go set up a target. Even throw away the 1,000 yard target. If you have a 22 and you want to practice
shoot 100 yards.
100 yards, 200, 300,
Hmm.
300 yards with 22 is admirable.
Hmm. I can't say I've ever done it. I don't think
Yeah,
I've
I
ever
haven't.
pushed mine past 200 now that I
Hmm.
think about it.
Yeah. So you can practice long distance.
Mhm.
The term is flexible depending on your application.
Mhm.
But the key is to go shoot, Squid.
Absolutely.
Go shoot. You don't need pressure. You don't need speed. You don't need scores. I think it's such an underrated thing. Just go shoot,
You should
man.
be competing with yourself before you ever compete with another individual.
Exactly. That's what I like to do. I bought 750 rounds of 7.62 NATO.
I love hearing those big numbers out of you, Buck. There we
That's the
go.
most ammo I've ever bought, period.
Woo-wee.
And that was specifically for me to get brass to reload,
Mhm.
but also I had an AR-10. And AR-10, I would say, is probably one of the trickiest guns to shoot in terms of consistency.
Mhm.
And I think ARs in general kind of fit into that keyhole. So the 700, 750 rounds, whatever I bought, was specifically to become a better shooter on that platform, which would then make me a better shooter on bolt platforms, which they're kind of two different disciplines, but it would make me a better shooter. And that was the key. And then using the brass to become a better reloader, to have more accurate loads to the AR-10, which, since now I'm a better shooter having gone through the factory ammo, I can now apply those accurate hand loads that much better. So that was kind of the master plan. Now that I've hit 1,000 yards or 1050, the pressure of not having hit that has kind of melted away.
Hmm.
It's kind of, it makes you a little bit more comfortable on the shooting range, and it gives you a little credit when you're talking to other people. Um, so yeah, 1050. Uh, it was a long journey, a lot of practicing, and maybe some of that was unnecessary. 4 to 5 years to hit 1,010 or 1050. I'll just call it 1,000, whatever.
Well, but
Um,
like you said, you weren't consistently shooting for all those years. I think somebody could probably start out in March of a
mhm.
year and probably be at that 1,000 mark. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna say before snow hits the ground in like November. I think if you gave it a solid 8 months of weekly shooting and breaking down whatever bad habits you have and relearning some fundamentals like those shooting between heartbeats you mentioned, if you can get in those in like in 8 months, I think you'd be 1,000 yard shooter.
And I think a lot of that can be caveated. You have to have the rifle
Hmm.
because there are some rifles that will be inconsistent at that
Yep, you
range.
got to have the right tool for the job.
Yep. The right optic. That I did not hit 1,000 yards with that $130 Simmons.
Hmm.
I upgraded to a Vortex Venom 5 to 25 by 56.
Those are nice.
Fantastic
Yeah.
optic, by the way. That was on my 3 and a Win mag. I had a Crimson Trace Series 2. Uh, that was a that was a big scope. I think it's a 6 to 24,
Hmm.
but it was a big scope too. I forget what that magnification range. And then 6 to 24 is a big bread and butter. I don't know why I stumbled there, but
On one of our first episodes, you said it was your bed and breakfast,
I
and I
know,
wanted to
dude,
make
that
that a
haunts
thing.
me today,
I've been laughing at that for weeks now.
and you didn't tell me.
No, I've made that a thing in my house now. I'm like, yeah, this is my bed and breakfast
That's
right
my
here.
bed and breakfast.
Yep,
Yes,
I
sir.
love it.
Oh my gosh. Hit a like button if you've heard that first episode and can see kind of our progression
Yep.
as we get into this podcast and be able
We'll have to make a shirt that says Buck's Bed and Breakfast is Remington 700s or something.
merch. Gotta love merch. Back to the topic. Yes, you have to have the right tool for the job. That goes outstanding. The gun and the optic are the two biggest pieces for consistency. I would say a bipod or a front rest is
Hmm.
probably my next piece.
Hmm.
I've done it all in terms of prone shooting, bench shooting, bipod, front rest, independent front rest. I prefer a rear bag. I fill a Crown Royal bag with rice.
I was gonna ask. That was gonna be a question I asked. Is what you prefer for a bag? Do you prefer sand? Do you prefer rice?
I've used sand, I've used rice, and I've used corn. Corn attracts the mice at home
Okay.
unless you wrap it in like cellophane or something like that.
I'm a big fan of a rest made out of navy beans.
And see, I can't find an excuse to buy beans at a store, so I just don't buy them.
Stock up for the apocalypse, Buck.
I've rice.
Rice and
I
beans,
don't like
bro.
beans.
It makes your rice taste better.
Anyways, I bought rice. I'm using rice right now. A lot of people get like really fancy bags for some reason, and I just took a trip to the liquor store,
Hmm.
you know, of age, so it's all
Yeah.
good,
Throw it in a Ziploc, then throw it in a Crown bag.
and you're good.
Yeah.
Like I hit 1,000 yards using the rear bag. It's not complicated.
No,
You
it's not
you
bad.
definitely don't need. So Arkin Optics sells a rear bag
Mm.
in their kit or individually. Great product. Doesn't cost a lot of money. Ironically, I think it costs the same as a handle of Crown Royal.
Oh, I'd
So
rather have the Crown
I'd rather
Royal.
have the Crown Royal.
Yeah.
Just keep the bag, throw some rice in it. You're gonna have to put rice in the Arkin anyways. I don't like sand. It's I've used playground sand before and it clumps up or it likes to sit, and it's also the heaviest medium. So I don't like the weight that it brings, and it just it didn't work well for my comfort level. So I switched to rice. I started with corn. Corn wasn't bad until the mice got to it.
Mhm.
So I use rice
I can
wrapped
only
in.
imagine that headache of finding your rest bag half eaten and being like, "Oh
My
no."
dad was so upset because I had made him. He had a Jim Beam bag, and I had made him a rear bag out of the corn, and they ate through the Jim Beam bag.
Oh,
Or maybe it was Captain Morgan. It was something. It was a nice bag,
oh, that
like
sucks.
velvety and all that good stuff. I was like, ah, rear bag, and they ate through it. So it kind of ruined it. Shout out to my dad. But So in terms of equipment, kind of the rest, what's going to be your stabilizer? That's my next piece that I'm purchasing, or at least I'm researching, or looking into, or looking to improve. Because if there's one thing that I did over the course of this journey, Squib, it was improving my gear or moving up. It doesn't mean I sold what I upgraded from. It just means I got a little better for that rifle.
I think that's regardless of what kind of shooting you're doing, whether it be handgun, rifle, 1,000 yard mission. I think that is always going to be something that shooters should be doing is upgrading, going through, figuring out what part of their gear works, what part doesn't. Um, Buck and I disagree with this. If you find something better, sell your old stuff, get rid of it, buy
And
better stuff.
and yeah, we do disagree with that because, for example, my girlfriend got her first rifle this past Christmas. It
Hmm.
was a Thompson Center compass with a
Ooh,
Boyd's laminate wood stock
so
on.
you do love this girl. Okay,
I do. I didn't get her a ring. I got her a gun. That's how you know it's true love.
that's better. Get her a set of scope rings. That means way more.
Well, it had a scope on it, but I had a better scope because I upgraded.
Hmm.
And so I can pass it along to her and she can become a better shooter with that equipment
Hmm.
and kind of go along the progression. The one thing I find probably the most annoying in the gun industry are the people that say you have to start at the top. Like you if you're looking at optics, and I'm saying this because I relate to it the most and I've worked with optics the most, you have to start with the Night Force. You have to start with the Leopold. You have to start at 14 to $2,000, 1,400 to $2,000 for your first optic on
My
your equipment.
wallet just clenched really
Yeah.
hard.
And like, why?
Hmm.
I started with $130. I set my record at 600 and I got better shooting off of that
Hmm.
optic versus if I started with $1,400 or 2,000, I wouldn't be able to afford the gas to get there
Right.
or the components to load the ammo. Or, I mean, there's so much cost that goes into this. I don't understand why people suggest, $1,500 optics for
Mhm.
someone who doesn't have the skill to back up the price.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's
then
it's
that's
really
the big thing.
unnecessary.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're gonna buy expensive optics or expensive equipment, you have to have the skill to use that to its full capacity. And many shooters are guilted into buying that because it's keeping up with the Joneses,
Hmm.
but then they have to learn the skill with that piece of equipment. I don't think it does any justice to the shooter at all to start off with all the expensive stuff.
I used to be really guilty about having to have the Gucci gear and all the cool
Yeah,
stuff, and I finally realized, oh, I really don't need this all the time, or it's not the best tool for the job. So I finally matured out of that a little bit.
yeah.
That being said, I still fall victim to it once in a while.
There's a YouTuber that I'll shout out, Guns Mullets America, and I hope I got that name right. I think I botched it, but something along those lines.
Hmm.
Mr. Mullets, I'll call him. He shoots in the dirt, and it drives me nuts because I've shot from a shooting mat for a while now.
Hmm.
I like my shooting mat, but he shoots in the middle of a cornfield in the dirt at his targets.
I'm gonna say it. I'd rather shoot on a shooting mat too.
Well, and I would, but at the same time, if it came down to it and I didn't have a shooting mat,
Yeah. What are you
I'd
gonna
lay
do?
down in
Not
the dirt
shoot?
and shoot.
Yeah.
Why have that keep you from shooting? And the answer is it won't.
Hmm.
So
That being said, shooting mats are not the craziest investment. I mean, you can get a really nice shooting mat for under
yeah,
$100.
40 to 60 bucks.
Hmm.
And honestly, a lot of the equipment that's kind of like the extras or like the pleasures of shooting. I would classify shooting mats under that
Mm.
because you can shoot in the dirt if you really
Or
want,
go buy a cheap blanket from Walmart or something. Go
or
buy a $20 twin size blanket that you're gonna lay down in the dirt with
a
and not
mattress
care.
topper
Yeah, it's something.
or
I mean,
something.
you don't have to go spend crazy money on a
You
shooting
could
mat.
go buy scrap 2x4s and you can make a bench. I've seen
Yeah.
people do that.
Hmm.
So the shooting mat, I would say, yes, it's a frill. But for some of that equipment, watch your sales.
Oh yeah.
Midway USA has one right now, I think, for 40 bucks.
Yeah. At the
And
time of
it's,
recording, we're coming up we're a few weeks away from Black Friday.
yes,
So man, be watching the websites for that kind of stuff on there.
yes. And so stock price is fantastic. But you know what's even better than that? Sale price. So a
Hmm.
lot of the extras that you kind of see, look out for selling or sale prices.
Or like Buck mentioned earlier, find an outlet store.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how cheap they are at outlet stores.
Or Facebook Marketplace.
Oh
For my
yeah.
reloading setup, I've bought so much off of Facebook Marketplace because people, again, people upgrade
Hmm.
and people like Squib sell their old stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm the person that buys that old stuff and keeps the old stuff.
And then I
So,
go buy something shiny.
yeah. So the good start out with a good bipod or the good support system. Get your rear bag. And then shooting mat, I would the prone position, I will admit, it is the easiest to shoot from.
Mm.
Especially if you have that front rest.
Yep. It's
It's
your
kind
most
of
stable
the
position.
yeah, and it's the turnkey option. If you want to go out and shoot, you don't have to wait on a bench. You don't have to haul a bench. You don't have to, practice running gunning. You lay down on a shooting mat and you shoot.
Yep. That's not going to beat up your elbows, your knees that way.
Now, I will say on the rest side of things, one thing I do want to protest, like amazingly, is lead sleds. I don't like lead sleds. I used to like lead sleds until I started working with optics and scopes. And I will say that you shouldn't use lead sleds. People have, and yes, sometimes they work great. I
Hmm.
wouldn't use them for sustained fire. Have you ever used a lead sled,
No, I
Squid?
have not. I've seen them
So,
on the ranges, but I've
yeah.
never used one personally.
And so the lead sled puts like a plate between your shoulder and the firearm. And it's supposed to be the most stable you can get your firearm. And that's true because it's in a frame and it's pointed towards the target.
Hmm.
That's one reason I don't like them because there's no human element. There's nothing to get better at there.
Yeah.
You point your scope at the target and you shoot, and that's it.
I feel like the next step after that is like that scene from Shooter with Mark Wahlberg where the guy has the remote
The
control to move
turret,
the rifle.
yeah,
Yeah. I feel like you're
yeah,
one step away with that from a lead sled. It just takes a lot of the humanity out of shooting.
yeah. And granted, some people are going to say, yeah, it's great for working up a hand load.
Sure.
And
Sure.
sure, I'll give you that. But I have found most scope failures on a rifle or ring failures or inaccuracies of a firearm when using a lead sled is because of the shock from the cartridge. It has to go. The laws of physics tells us that force goes through the point of least resistance, and if it's not your shoulder and it's a metal plate that's not least resistance, where does it go? Your scope rings and the screws that are in there, or even one better, the action screws.
Mm.
That's your next weakest point. And so it has been observed that scope rings, bases, mounts, action screws, anything that is screwed on your rifle has come loose. And again, I know you people are typing in the comments. It's been observed. And optics companies have their disclaimers don't use lead sleds. And you can put Loctite on it, which I'm also against.
You're against Loctite?
I'm against Loctite on scope rings because it's a lubricant and it
Yeah, I
can
can meet you there. Okay.
well, it can throw off your torque wrench, and you can
That makes
put more
sense.
torque on your rings than you think, and then you get result your tube
Oh, see,
burst.
Squib just goes two Ugadugas with a power drill, and once
That's
she's
one way to do it.
once she's tight, she's tight.
Yeah, don't ever have to worry about taking rings off. But so I'm against lead sleds, and I am against Loctite. I think a generation grew up with Loctite, and I think that's why it's used.
I'm sorry for my generation. These youngins don't know.
But I think we're in a point of technology now where we can put the Loctite away, people.
Oh, you'll never
Consistencies are better
you'll never get the
manufacturing.
blue Loctite off my bench
Huh.
from
I
my
I do
cold
have
dead
two of a blue
hands.
Loctite. I do have it. I do use it, not on scope rings.
I understand.
So
You also move around optics a lot more than I do.
I handle so many in both rings and optics.
Yeah. So that
Um,
makes sense for you,
I
absolutely.
can't set and forget it. I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah,
But
once I find an optic I like to go on a weapon, it's gonna stay there, and
yeah,
it's very rare if I ever change that optic.
mhm,
I'm gonna change the gun before I change the optic. I'll go buy a different gun to put on the different optic just so I have variety.
yeah. So yeah, lead sleds I'm totally against. Don't use them if you're a learner. You can if you're doing load development, you can get good enough through your eyes, through your shoulder. Practice them fundamentals. You'll be fine with your load development. Lead sleds, like I said, it's been observed. Screws are backing out. So if you do use a lead sled, check your screws after.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say you can't use them because you definitely can. People have used them before. There's a reason they sell a lot of them.
They are a tool for a job that I don't like.
Well, yeah, I won't use them just because. It's always going to be up against my shoulder so that the point of least resistance is my body.
Hmm.
And that's why good fundamentals are important. And so that's kind of a good segue into our fundamentals part. We've talked about the breathing, we've talked about the heart rate, and the shooting between beats, all that great stuff. There was a neat trick I learned, Squib, going through this journey, and it's how comfortable you should be when prone and behind your rifle. And the idea is you're supposed to get on target, your reticle's on target, and you close your eyes and you act like you go to sleep. Just rest your head, have the right cheek riser and the cheek weld, and you just act like you go to sleep.
Now I got to ask, who taught you that?
I don't remember.
Because I heard that from my grandfather growing up. Is fall asleep behind your gun and you should still be on target when you bring your eyes open.
Exactly.
That is not foreign to me at all.
No. I think that's very good practice. And it goes back to the comfort behind the rifle. If you
Hmm.
can sleep behind your gun, that's a good position
Hmm.
to be in. So that's kind of the trick that I learned. And I annoyed my girlfriend many a day, Squib, when I was practicing in the hallway. Bipod up. I had my reticle on some point on the wall, and I took up so much space in our small apartment. And I was just practicing putting my head down, getting my head position right, making sure my body position was correct, falling asleep behind the rifle, opening my eyes, making sure I was still on target. That is something, if you can't go to the range all the time, that's a great drill to do.
Hmm. Great thing to do in your own home.
You could even take like an expo marker and draw a little plus if you have like a shiny enough wall,
Hmm.
and there's your aim point. Or tape a piece of paper on the wall.
Worst case scenario, dad advice coming in here. WD-40 will take that off the wall if you need it to.
Yeah, but I might take the paint too.
Nope, I haven't. I've had Sharpie come off the wall for my kid. I've had Magic Marker. I've had Expo Marker. WD-40.
They should sponsor us.
WD-40, please sponsor us. I want to be Hank Hill and have a little mini WD-40 to open the lid of my other WD-40 if it gets stuck.
Old Hank Hill stuff. So to top off the fundamentals, body position is the last thing I'm going to harp on.
Hmm.
A lot of, and I'll blame my dad's generation for this, body position has often been grabbed from the old Green Army dudes. You know those?
Oh yeah.
And they point, so in orientation to the body might be straight, but the gun is oriented at the 10 o'clock position
Hmm.
or like 10:30.
Yep.
And so this whole idea is like the shoulder is literally the only thing behind the rifle, and then your body's at a complete 45-degree angle to the
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
And that is like the worst.
I'm gonna blame Mattel and their dang little army guys that I love.
And then they complain their shoulder hurts. And that
Weird.
that bothers me. And I'm like,
What?
man, if you just put your whole body
What
behind
do
the
you
rifle,
mean your
you
shoulder
want it to
hurts?
be like if you think of a clock, the short hand pointing towards the 6, long hand pointing towards the 12. Your body is pointed towards the 6, your gun's pointed towards the 12. It's a straight line. Get as behind that rifle as you can. Flatten your feet. Put the insides of your feet on the ground. Be as flat as you can, and there you go.
Hmm.
Good body position is a cornerstone. Because again, it goes back to comfort.
Yep. It's called a fundamental for a reason.
And I have tried that L position that people like to do. I don't find it comfortable. I don't know how they can do it.
I've done it with ARs to literally take pictures as a Green Army guy for Halloween one year.
Mm.
But I never shot with it because it just didn't seem comfortable or right to me.
And maybe I can see some application in like three gunning, or if you in competition, if you need to go prone and shoot through an obstacle to hit a target, and maybe you don't have time to get your right body alignment,
I cannot think of a single time shooting three gun where I was not 12 and 6
and
shooting
you
under an
and
obstacle.
you would have more experience than I. So I'll take your word on that.
That we get put in a lot of weird positions because it's a lot of time dealer's choice of how do you want to deal with this target. Just get your rounds on target, however you're going to do it.
Yeah,
I cannot remember a single time I ever even saw anybody using that old army guy position.
right. Which is good. I want to
Hmm.
see that go away. So, I mean, in terms of basis for fundamentals, we've given listeners quite a lot to think about, hopefully to apply, because at the very least, even if some people don't disagree with some of, or don't agree with some of the fundamentals we've given, Still good practice.
Absolutely. And all these fundamentals aren't just, transferable to a 1,000-yard mission.
Yeah.
These things, you're breathing, you're feeling your heart rate, your head position, your body position, that staying relaxed behind the gun. That should be you regardless of your weapons platform. You should have good body and head posture when you're shooting a handgun, whether you're shooting an AR, a shotgun, or a large caliber rifle trying to hit that 1,000-yard mark.
How many people at the pistol range have you seen that are standing like a question mark with their shoulders and their chest all the way like back, like lean back?
More than a couple.
It drives me nuts.
I also get the old timers that are still teacupping.
Revolvers, that's okay.
The revolvers, you almost have to on some of them. But I will say the amount of people teacupping, the old 1980s and 70s police combat stance of turning and having your right foot back if you're a right-handed shooter and your left foot forward, it's horrible. Turn and face your target. I mean, I was taught some great fundamentals from a caveman friend of mine. Shout out caveman, who was a Marine Corps rifle instructor. And the idea is you are facing your target with the front of your chest because you're hopefully wearing body armor. And you want more of that armor exposed to possible rounds coming at you than having it turn to the side where you're probably not wearing side plates because they're
No,
not comfortable.
no.
So, I mean, those fundamentals of having that body posture, that's critical.
Really, and I think that was a great point, but also we're to a point, I think this podcast, I would like to be a source for someone starting out. And that's kind of
Mm-mm.
why the inspiration behind this episode is, I wanted to make something that if I were listening to it 5 years ago, starting this mission from my Remington 700, I wanted something I could follow or someone to give me advice on where to start
Mm-hmm.
or how to proceed. Because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that when I was going through my journey. That's why it took 4 or 5 years for me to do it. So, with that in mind, I'm okay with covering fundamentals that I used because that made me a better shooter, and it can very much benefit a new shooter today.
The Bucks Garage Podcast, where we get you shooting 1,000 yards if you listen to this episode in 8 months. Maybe.
It's very attainable. I do encourage if you do have a friend that's done it before, and I'll do it with Squib. Take him out, even to spot. Spotting is fun. I like spotting. Takes the pressure out of me. And in sniper squads, fun fact: sniper squads, the more experienced sniper is the spotter,
Mm-hmm.
and the less experienced one is the shooter. So I would have no problem, Squib, taking you out to the 1,000 yard range
I
and
would
spotting.
love that.
And
That would be
I think
amazing.
that'd be a great,
I imagine it's probably a cool feeling as a spotter. A lot of time when you see that hit, almost like a coach would for an
yeah,
athlete. I bet it's a lot of that similar, feeling.
yes, you're very much right.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to do it.
So with that in mind, I think I'd like to transition kind of one of our final talking points, Squib, and kind of from this episode. And it's okay if you don't have any new goals, Squib, but kind of what are your next thoughts on your journey, your shooting journey, in terms of what you want to go for?
Two things, Buck.
Okay,
Number one, I want to push my AR shooting out to 600 now, instead of my 550, because just knowing you were at 600, that makes me want to push.
I hit 600 with Iron Sight Mosin, so
Okay, now you got
you
me.
go. I mean, your AR with the proper ammo, you're not shooting any of that steel crap.
It's cheap, man. It works.
It works for
We'll
200
we'll use some
yards.
nice we'll use some nice 77 grain match stuff.
You can take that 700, 800 yards. No reason why you can't.
We'll get there. And then that second goal, definitely, I want my 1,000 yards. I want to know that I can put a round on
Mhm.
target at 1,000 yards.
On a torso.
That
That's a
is
great feeling.
I want it, Buck.
Yeah.
Put me in, coach. Let's go.
So to piggyback off of that, some of mine are going to be. I need to hit 1,000 with that Savage 12 and
Hmm.
6.5 Creedmoor. Have to. I've done it with every other gun that can get there aside from my AR-10. So I think it's time I need to go take the 6.5 Creedmoor out and shoot 1,000 yards with it. I do also want to hit 1,000 yards with my AR-10. I have a little bit more work to do on that one because
Hmm.
I'm starting load development
Which
for it.
that would be very commendable.
Yeah, with how picky AR-10s
Yeah,
are with ammo.
we're gonna have to get that on video for sure.
Yes, for sure. I also have a 224 Valkyrie AR-15. Also have a really long way to go with that one because I have not started load development at all, and it doesn't shoot box ammo well. So I
Mm.
need to get that out to 1,000 yards. That'll be a 75 grain hollow point boat tail out of the 224 Valkyrie. And then aside from that, I want to hit a mile. That's my next big one.
I want to be there for that
Yeah,
because I want to see that jumping up and down. I want to see that excitement because that has got to be one of the greatest feelings as a shooter.
yeah, a big old mile,
Yeah,
and it'll
putting lead on target at a
yeah.
mile.
And I ran a mile for my exercise today, and it
Mhm.
took me 9 minutes. I'm a slow runner. Don't make fun of me.
A
But
9 minute mile coming from a
nine,
fat boy across Taylor, that is not bad.
yeah. And so to think it would take me 9 minutes to get there, and I would be winded,
Yeah, yeah.
to get to my impact. That's pretty cool. And I have the guns to do it. That 338 LaPois will do it. My 300 Win Mag will do it. People have done it with 6.5 Creedmoor and 308. So I have the capacity to do it on the equipment side of things. So now I think the big obstacle there is finding a place to do it.
Mhm.
1,000 yard range, there are very limited places you can go and shoot unless you know someone.
Right.
A mile, it just gets more difficult.
Yeah, I am trying to think of a mile long range we have within 300 miles of here. I think there's one. And I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but there's a range opening up. Gosh, about 100 miles from here, out in the middle of nowhere, and the guy is a former Green Beret, I believe, and he's opening
What?
up a shooting school.
Dang
Hmm.
it.
They're gonna have a mile long range.
Oh, I got to go shooting at that.
I'll get you his info.
Maybe that'll be the day. But those are kind of my goals. Most of mine are distance. I think if I had to attach one more onto that list, I want to take my Mosin out, and I'm doing load development for that gun too. I want to get that not at 1,000 because that is iron sights. I can't do 1,000
No,
iron
we get you
sights.
a cool PPU scope or whatever they are.
Maybe,
One of those classic 4 time whatever they used back then.
yeah. I would like to hit. What did I say I hit with it before?
6, I think.
Oh, I'll have to redact
Yeah,
that
you
info.
said you said
I said
600.
6. I think it was 400
Okay,
actually.
which is still commendable.
Yeah, I would like to get to 600 at some point with the right ammo. Get that gun shooting right.
If we're on the range the same day and I hit 600 with my AR and you hit 600 with a Mosin, I'm probably going to quit shooting forever.
Either way, I mean, I don't know. That ARs are. I mean, if you have the scope, you're fine at 600. You can do it. I've seen people do it. The Mosins, that's
That's going
tricky.
to be interesting.
That's the culmination of a lot of years of shooting
Yeah.
experience. So, another emphasis to our listeners out there is everyone's journey looks different. Squib and I have different personalities and different shooting aspects. Uh, Squib shoots a lot of handguns and a lot of shotguns. His journey is going to look a lot different from mine. I specified bolt guns,
Hmm.
and now I'm moving into semi-automatic rifles and trying to get distance at that. Everyone's going to look different in their history. So I think this is a great point to add that the gun industry is very much like the fitness industry in the sense that they like to put a lot of stuff on social media and flash fancy stuff and look what I did. You don't have to pace yourself on that. You don't have to pace yourself against people, influencers, or people you see at the range or anyone against your own shooting experience and your own shooting journey. That's a path you walk alone. So if you want to get better, it's up to you to get better and learn on the way. So
Make sure you have a good friend like Buck to bring you along to be a good spotter and
that
teach you.
that cuts your time down considerably if you know someone.
You're going to save me a lot of money on ammo instead of me just lobbing it out there and seeing, oh, I guess we're going to see where it lands.
Honestly, because it took me 200 rounds of 300 Win Mag to get out to 1,000, shooting 100 and out to all those respective ranges.
Hmm.
So get really good at hitting targets outside your comfort zone. My bread and butter, not bed and breakfast.
I mean, it could
So
be your bed and
ridiculous.
breakfast.
It was like 500 yards. That was like, it was easily attainable for me. It was a lot of fun. And that was outside my comfort range at that time. My comfort was 100. So anything past 100 was uncomfortable. 500, once I got good at that, well, now 600's got to be my new uncomfortable. After 600, I was kind of forced to go to 1,000. So that's a big
Hmm.
jump. But get good at hitting targets outside your comfort zone. That's a great way to improve on your shooting. Um, and then really, it's just depending, your application depends on what kind of shooter you are. So, I
Hmm.
mean, also look at your application. 22 rim fire long range shooting is different than center fire long range shooting. So definitely check what cartridges you want to get into. and follow us for the podcast for more information on what cartridges you could look into to starting your journey.
Because there are a number of options.
A lot of great options.
Hmm.
You could shoot anything. 223 is great for long range
Hmm.
because you can put 77 grain Sierra Match Kings in there
Hmm.
and go to 800 yards. I'm sure you could push that to 9 and 1,000.
I would be shocked. I'd love to see it. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
doable.
Yeah.
Man, that'd be one heck of a shot for an AR.
And then from the 223, you have the 338 Lepois.
Mhm.
You have the 28 Nosler. You have the 300 Rum. A lot of massive cartridges. 300 Weatherby. All
Mhm.
can do the 1,000 yard shot. Or you can go to the small end, back to the small end. 22 250 might be able to do it. I'd say you could do it. 308, 708, 260, that whole family.
Almost any cartridge could probably get there with enough arc and enough luck.
It'd be like the Mosin with the old artillery sights. How it goes up to
Exactly.
like
Yep.
over 2,000 meters.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, all that's to say, the small things go a long way, folks, with the fundamentals especially. So, push the limits whenever you have to and use your fundamentals. That's your strong point. I played college baseball for a little bit, and the emphasis was on fundamentals. Baseball is a fundamentals game, shooting is a fundamental sport. So, get good at the small things, and you're going to see your returns uh, gain in the long run. So, with that, thanks for tuning in. This is the end of the episode about my 1,000 yard journey. Squib, I don't suppose you have any questions.
No, my question is, when are we going to go out to that range so I can
Yeah,
start putting some lead on some steel?
we need to go soon because it's fun stuff, and I'd love to practice my spotting. But if you'd like to support us, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening through Spotify, you can find us on Patreon. We only have one tier right now for Patreon at $5 a month if you feel like supporting us that way. You get to see a little bit more content in Patreon, and then you also have a direct link to chat with us and talk about topics for episodes. If you have any suggestions or any feedback in general, or any questions about your hosts. So with that, YouTube, Patreon, I think I covered all
You
my.
got them.
We are on
Yeah. And
Spotify.
we're also on
We
Instagram.
are on Instagram. Yep, all that will be in the description. And in the meantime, until the next episode, buy more magazines.
Mhm.
I'll always say that.
Yep. Drink
Squib,
water, change your socks, eat some bananas, and
eat some bananas.
eat bananas because monkey never cramp.
Just so people know, our outro is going to change with the episodes. We'll get better at this, but we appreciate you tuning in and giving us your listening hour. So, in the meantime, we'll see you on the next episode.
Have a great night.